friends. Can we help time again? We've got some fantastic questions for you this week. Stupid. Like this. Why is it that you never see baby seagulls? We've got the answer for you coming up, along with this stuff as well. How could we forget Australia's pioneering aviator LORES Bonney? Why do strobe lights trigger epileptic fits? Norman Swan has the answer. Why don't things taste the same to everybody? And just how do our taste buds work? I get to eat things and find out. And that's not all. Kate and Jeff are here and they'll be answering more of your requests. Hello, Kate.
Hello, Pete.
Jeff.
Hello, Pete.
What's going on this week, Kate?
Well, have you ever stood at those supermarket queues where the sign says 12 items or less?
Many times.
Now, does that make you cross?
Does it make me cross? Depends how long the queue is.
12 items or fewer, according to one of our viewers.
Okay.
And what do crows have to do with crowbars?
Don't know.
Good question.
Great question. Jeff?
Lost and Found is fantastic this week. It's about an old digger, memories of a prisoner of war camp in Sarawak, and two little boys, twins they were, with the most beautiful smiles. And this old fellow always wondered what had happened to him. Have a look.
Goodness me.
Jan McPherson is only hours away from giving her 86-year-old father, Bob Drysdale, the surprise of his life. He has no idea he'll soon get the answer to a question he's pondered since World War II. What happened to these twin native boys from the Bisaya tribe in Borneo?
I really love that story. We'll have more of that later, but for the moment, I want you to come fly with me on a special moment in time.
Come fly with me, let's fly away.
When it comes to aviation history, it wasn't just those magnificent men in their flying machines, there were some notable women as well. The Americans had Amelia Earhart, the English Amy Johnson. But Erica Haddon from WA wants to know, why haven't we paid more attention to the achievements of our own pioneer aviatrix, LORES Bonney?
I well remember the first time I spun propeller, I was absolutely terrified.
Born in Pretoria, South Africa in 1897, her family migrated to Queensland when LORES was 8. In 1917, LORES met and married leather merchant Harry Bonney, and it was his aviator cousin who would inspire her lifelong passion for flying.
The first flight, oh, that's very easy to remember, was with Bert Hinkler. This was the answer to all my dreams. The sensation was magnificent. I literally felt like a bird.
LORES Bonney was hooked. She gained her pilot's licence in 1931 and immediately embarked on her first long-distance adventure.
I had in mind long-distance flying, and I thought, well, here goes. I'll go down to Father, who lived at Wangaratta. And so I went down on Boxing Day. Consequently, Christmas dinner was waiting for me, so that was an incentive.
Bonney had greater ambitions, intending to fly solo from Australia to England, the reverse of Amy Johnson's 1930 record flight. But to do this, she would need more flying experience, so she made plans to fly around Australia.
King Smith was at the drome at the time, and I spoke to him, and he said, oh yes, I suppose you can do it if you've got enough guts. So I thought, well, I think I can do it, and so off I went.
Mrs. Bonney's round Australia flight was a first for a female pilot, and by 1933 she was ready for her biggest challenge.
The difficulties about the flight for LORES was that she was doing it in a wood and fabric biplane with an engine, four-cylinder air-cooled engine, about 100 horsepower, so about the horsepower of your average family car today. And it was very much virgin territory.
The journey was not without incident. A crash landing threatened to end her adventure.
The water caught my left wing, and I just simply somersaulted. And then I found I was gulping seawater, and I realised that I would drown. And however, I struggled with the pin in my harness. Finally got the pin out, struggled out of the cockpit, and there I sat reviewing my poor little plane with its wheels heavenwards instead of earthwards.
Forced to ship her damaged plane to Calcutta for repair, This delay meant she had no chance of beating Amy Johnston's record, but LORES was determined to complete the journey.
There was that element of being a woman and the first to do something, but I think it was very much a personal achievement. She could. She had the financial ability to do it. She had the skills to do it, and therefore she was going to do it.
At the time, LORES Bonney's adventures were well documented in the press, but as decades passed and air travel became more commonplace, she began to fade from public memory.
I think Amy Johnston was recognised over LORES because she was the first to make that long-distance flight from England to Australia, and therefore you achieve the accolades for being the first.
Yes.
I find it amazing that we lose touch with people like LORES Bonney and forget what an extraordinary adventurer she was. She'd had a decent PR person. I think she would have been very famous indeed. You know, she took that little battered gypsy moth around the world, my little ship, she called it, and has never really been acclaimed, but maybe we should do it today. 75 years, you know.
We salute you.
LORES.
There it is.
Yeah.
Ask the expert time.
Dr. Norman Swan.
It's Doctor. He's back.
I like him. He knows nearly everything.
Just about. He's a doctor. He has to. It's his job. Let's have a look. For a quarter of a century, Dr. Norman Swan has been ABC's top quack hack, a medical journo who's won 3 Walkleys and a United Nations Media Award.
You're on ABC Radio now.
First up, Petra from Stanmore wants to know, why do strobe lights trigger epileptic fits?
The bottom line to this answer is no one really knows why flashing lights induce an epileptic fit. But in fact, of all people with epilepsy, only 3 or 5 out of 100 get a fit when exposed to a flashing light. And it's not every flashing light. It's got to be at a certain frequency. And the lower the frequency, the more likely you are to get it. And what's thought to happen is that the flashing lights synchronize with certain cells in the brain that are abnormal, and that triggers the electric explosion which causes an epileptic fit.
Next, Colin from Bairnsdale asks, why are solariums worse for you than direct sunlight?
You don't have to be Einstein to work out why solaria are worse for you than direct sunlight. There's no escape. There's no umbrella. There's no sunblock. You're there in that box with one purpose only, to get burnt by ultraviolet light. And be under no illusions at all. Ultraviolet light is a grade A carcinogen.
Finally, Simon from Coffs Harbour has this query. What actually happens when a person faints?
The first thing to say is, what is a faint? And what is different from a faint for, say, having a cardiac arrest? A person who faints, by and large, gets a feeling that they're going to faint. They're feeling unwell, and they drop down to the floor, and it's very unusual to get injured in a faint. Whereas if you have a cardiac arrest or a fit, you drop to the floor very suddenly and you can get injured. What happens in a standard faint is that you've seen something noxious, something that you feel unpleasant, or you're feeling unwell, and the vagus nerve, that's a nerve that comes from the brain, is stimulated. And when your vagus nerve is stimulated, your heart slows down. And in some people, it can slow down and stop for a short while, which means that you've got no blood pressure. Therefore, the blood's not pumping to your head, and you drop to the floor. The very act of dropping to the floor revives you, and you come round very quickly, and you remember exactly what's happened to you.
Thank you, Dr. Swanee. He's good, isn't he? If you've missed any episodes of Can We Help, head to the website because you can watch them again. Yeah. And while you're there, ask us a question. Go on. Or if you prefer to write, Can We Help? ABC TV, GPO Box 9994 in your capital city, or email canwehelp@your.abc.net.au. Now to the master of all things wordy, Kate Barrage. Kate.
Pete.
Remember that? It's for the kids.
Nice.
So fast, isn't it?
Getting faster too.
Oh, I reckon. Here we go. I'll do this one with a little bit of attitude. It's got an attitude behind it, this question from Elizabeth Springfield in South Australia. Do I have to acknowledge that language is ever-changing and accept such things as less people instead of fewer people?
Well, she's right, because the rule is, well, on the surface, straightforward. Fewer goes with things you can count. So we have to have fewer baths now.
Yes.
And less used with mass nouns, things you can't count.
Yes.
We have to use less water.
Right.
But it's not that straightforward, and in fact, less has been pushing out fewer since the 10th century.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if there'd been express lanes in Anglo-Saxon times in supermarkets, it would be 12 items or less in those days.
Right.
But it's a difficult one to maintain. If I dived into my wallet and said, I've got fewer than $10 here, you'd think it was a bit precious, I think,
Yes.
although you count dollars. You know, there it's mass as well. So it's a very, very difficult distinction to maintain.
Here we go. With terms of endearment such as sweetheart, sugar, babe, where does darling fit in? From Noni Primrose and Hunters Hill. Again, Noni, thanks for writing in twice.
Darling's one of these really unusually... well, it's a very stable term. In the 9th century, darling existed and it meant
did it
the
really?
same as it does today.
Oh,
you know,
truly?
one who is loved. And it's made up of deer, so it was deorling in 10th century.
Oh, that's right.
Deer, plus this cuddly little ling ending that you get on gosling and duckling.
Oh, okay.
So a little deer.
Oh, isn't that nice? There you are, Noni. Why is a crowbar called a crowbar and not, say, a budgery bar? Well done, Robert Henderson from Westlake, Brisbane.
The crowbar was called just simply the crow in the 1400s,
Right.
and it's you know, it's this bent bit of metal, isn't it? And at one end, it's splayed a
Got a
bit.
hooky.
Yes, so that you can presumably
Get
leave
nails
it.
out.
Exactly, exactly.
Blokey stuff with it.
And it looks like crow's feet. People assume sort of looks like crow's feet.
That'd be a crow, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Crow with no toe.
yeah, just one toe missing. So it might just as well be a budgery bar, I suppose, except that budgery
They're
gars.
not as aggressive, say, as a crow. Crows are
Yeah,
bigger,
they're a bit more
nastier bird.
delicate.
The budgery guard, you'd have a little thing to help you around the house with a budgery bar. I'll just use the budgery bar for this. Ding, 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 ding. I'll get the crowbar out for this one. See what the deep voice always helps. Thank you, Kate.
Pleasure.
Wordwise complete. Now, I went to investigate taste buds.
Did you?
You know things taste different to other people? I had to find out why. Let's have a look. Pete investigates taste buds. Wendy from Darwin wants to know, why don't things just taste the same to everybody? Good question, Wendy. So I've come to Deakin University to find out. Via the cafeteria, so I felt like a bit of chocky poo cake, a bit of cop. Thank you very much for being here.
Pleasure.
Why don't things taste the same to everybody?
It's a good question.
I know it is, that's why I'm here.
Well, we've all got different sensory systems. Within those sensory systems, there's a lot of variation.
Okay.
And that is basically the reason why, if you taste that pretzel, it may be slightly different to you than it is to me.
Now, what I find surprising, Russ, is there's only 5 tasting groups, is that right?
That's right, there is only 5 basic tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami.
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 Good friend of mine. What is umami?
Umami, it's a Japanese word,
Yeah,
and
thought
it
so.
really means savoury or delicious.
You probably
and
could have
it's-
said savoury, Russell.
I like to be
Technically
technically
correct, that's fair enough.
correct.
With only 5 tastes, how can we have so many flavours? Well, it's because taste is only part of the puzzle. For instance, 75% of our flavour perception comes from our sense of smell, as I was to find out, in a rather nasty way.
Just tell me what you perceive on your tongue.
I perceive salt.
Okay.
Only by texture, more than anything else.
Now remove your nose plug.
Uh-oh. Oh, that's a nasty trick.
That is a nasty trick. You had no airflow over your sense of smell, so you couldn't smell what I'm now getting, which is a highly rotten egg, cabbage type breath.
Great.
That you've got coming out. And it was
Well, I'm
this-
glad you're getting it, because it was a mean trick. You deserve it, Russell.
I hope it doesn't last. That's
Well, so do I. Smell isn't the only thing that can affect taste. Something as simple as colour sets up certain expectations.
Tell me what flavour it is.
Okay, easy. Oh, a version of kind of strawberry or raspberry.
Okay.
Or lime, cordial. In fact, they were both identical raspberry flavour. It's mental trickery.
It is trickery.
Trickery.
And your eyes are telling you something,
Yes.
and you're not trusting your sense of taste and smell.
Right. I did do another experiment to see if I was a super taster. Turns out I wasn't, so I'm skipping over the detail. But basically, a chemical soaked into a piece of paper I was chewing tastes like nothing to some people and repulsively bitter to others.
So what flavour does that taste like?
Pretty much a piece of paper, right? Yeah.
This is a very good experiment to show how things can taste different for different people and the individual variation that we actually have in taste. So what it comes to in the end is we are all individuals, and just as we've got different faces, we've got different sensory systems and different processing that goes on in our brain, different emotions, and they all link together in the way we perceive our foods.
Yes, I was quite looking forward to that story. As it turned out, it was quite horrible to taste horrible things and be tricked by quite a nice man, but he was a tricker. Jeff, email time.
Yeah.
Here we go. This is from Diane Lovett. Thank you, Diane. Why don't you see baby or small seagulls?
Ah,
They
Diane.
do seem they're the same size.
She hasn't seen them, but she's made a keen observation.
She has.
It's pretty simple, really. It is. You don't see baby seagulls. They don't have nappies. They don't have dummies in their mouths. When they're hatched, they only spend about 3 or 4 weeks on the nest, and by that time they're already just about fully grown.
True play.
Yeah. What you might see are seagulls of adult size who are sort of a mottled grey colour. They're the babies.
Right, yes.
So they've grown to full size, but they're mottled and grey in colour, and they don't get that lovely white, clean, clear plumage of their parents for another 3 or 4 years.
No.
Simple as that.
Kate, according to the movies, there was a time where the ladies were prone to fainting. Oh, like that, yeah? And a bottle of smelling salts would be carried in their bag. What salts would have been used, and why is it no longer used? Why don't you keep on fainting, Kate? Never seen you faint.
We don't wear those corsets anymore, thank goodness.
Of course, couldn't
Yes.
breathe. We should get those corsets.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Tighten up a bit.
It's some sort of chemical compound which would release ammonia gas.
Right.
And that would then stimulate or irritate, really, the mucous membranes of the nose and of the lungs, and that would then cause the muscles that work the breathing apparatus to work faster.
Wow.
I remember discovering a bottle once when I was very little in my grandmother's wardrobe, and it just about knocked me out. I took a big, you know... They're still used, by the way.
Really?
To revive athletes or boxers who've been knocked
of
out.
course.
And some athletes, I gather, might use it as a pick-me-up.
Thank you, Kate.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff. Lost and found.
Lost and found. Bob Drysdale is an old soldier with memories of being on Sarawak, waiting to come home at the end of the Second World War. He also remembers 2 little blokes, 2 little boys with huge smiles, kids brought up by Australian missionaries, and for all the time since then, he's wondered whatever became of them. Let's find out.
Did you find them?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Jan McPherson is only hours away from giving her 86-year-old father, Bob Drysdale, the surprise of his life. He has no idea he'll soon get the answer to a question he's pondered since World War II. What happened to these twin native boys from the Bisaya tribe in Borneo?
I think it'll just shock him, bring back so many memories for him, and I think he'll just be really happy because that was a nice, happy ending to the war.
Bob first met 4-year-old Dandy and Dennis Tiong, otherwise known as Michael and Stephen, in 1945 when he was in charge of the Labuan repatriation camp in Borneo. Both boys were former POWs awaiting passage to Australia with their foster parents, Australian missionaries Roland and Mary Buscher. The couple had taken care of them after their mother died during childbirth.
Because their mother had died at birth, they were considered the curse of the gods and bad luck. The Australian missionaries rescued them from certain death, for sure.
After the horrors of jungle warfare, Michael and Stephen's joyful demeanour quickly won over everyone in the camp, including Bob.
You could see the love they were throwing out to be loved. They were so polite, you'd have to see them operating to be able to describe it. They were loved by all.
His memories are these little boys coming up to them first thing every morning and saying good morning to the Australian soldiers, and Dad remembers their smiles so clearly to this day.
The Buschers returned to Australia with Michael and Stephen, but they left such an impression that to this day Bob still wonders what became of them.
The amount of time, and still happens, that I wake up and think of those kids is unbelievable.
When Jan asked us for help, we didn't want to get Bob's hopes up, so we decided to keep it quiet, which turned out to be a good thing because the search took months and led us on a merry chase through Australia, the United States and England, before returning to Borneo, where we learnt that Michael had no regrets about the direction his life had taken.
I certainly was lucky that Mum and Dad adopted me, and well, it was a wonderful path, and I'm extremely happy that I'm here. Unfortunately, Mum and Dad are not around, but yes, I'm happy.
Growing up, Michael and Stephen's lives alternated between Australia and Borneo as their parents continued to work in both countries. Eventually, when Michael fell in love with his future wife, he chose to settle down in Borneo. He's now retired with 4 children and 6 grandchildren. Michael and his brother always remain close, even when Stephen joined the armed forces in England. Happily married with 2 children, Stephen passed away 5 years ago.
Well, he was more or less Stephen, my brother, living somewhere else. He was very close. He's more or less, he was just happened to be far away. His choice was his choice.
Bob knows we're looking for the twins, but he doesn't know we found Michael, let alone that we've flown him and his daughter to Victoria for a surprise visit. So now, with Jan's help and a few dubious half-truths, we've got our cameras in place without Bob suspecting a thing.
Good.
If I could meet them, I'm quite sure that I'd be overcome because I thought of them so much for so long. And it would be wonderful.
I'm really excited. I just can't wait to see Dad's face, and I'm wondering if Dad's going to recognise who he is. Dad, 4 inches of someone to meet you. Take yourself back 63 years. Take yourself back 63 years.
Oh, no.
Yes.
One of the twins, Dad.
I'm one of the twins, huh? I'm pleased to meet you.
Oh, my God. Unbelievable.
I think he was just shocked, you know, that just the look on his face. He couldn't believe who he was looking at.
60, along.
And you were a cheeky little brat that high.
I was high.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I thought I was a good boy.
Isn't that unbelievable? The biggest surprise I've ever had in my life. And you buggers up the back then, you too, didn't you? Eh? And you're as bad, Judy. I still got to pinch myself to think it's happened.
While Bob now has the chance to learn about Michael and Stephen's lives, we've arranged for another surprise. Some old wartime footage that both have never seen.
Did you see that? Yeah. The whole thing, this is something that I will never forget.
I can still see those little kids coming up to me in the mornings and one on each side of me, grab my hand and go back to Mum and say hello and so forth. And those, you don't lose those things. And you can't explain them, but that's the thought that came straight back today.
I am really happy, yeah, just to see the smile on their faces, the two of them. They're just having a great time together. I think it means a lot to Dad.
I really love that story. It's really about twins who took very different paths. Stephen joined the British Army and led a very Western lifestyle, and Michael remained in Malaysia and lived a very traditional one.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for all your hard work. Thank you, Kate, for all yours. That's it. Another week of Can We Help done and dusted. Researchers upstairs waiting for your letters and your emails, so please keep them coming in. We'll be back with more of your answers and requests in 7 days. Until then, have a great weekend and good night.